it makes sense that my body probably needs a break. If I want my brain to be at top performance, I probably can't be asking it to digest food at the same time. So I was starting to like say, all right, in the morning, I kind of forget to eat sometimes. And, when you have ADHD or you have little kids at home, mornings are hectic. It's a time when you just want to simplify things. So I was like, let's just see what happens. Let me give this a try. And so I inadvertently adopted intermittent fasting because it was absolutely obvious to me that my productivity was way higher when I didn't eat.
I'm here with Marisa Moon. Marisa, it's such a treat. We were just talking about your amazing book, Not So Fast, that I just read a week ago on vacation. And it's amazing. You were so sneaky. You didn't really tell anyone you were writing this awesome book. And then suddenly you're like, I think you were over for dinner and I mentioned my book and you're like, yeah, mine's getting published next week or something. I'm like, well, where did that come from?
It just took everything in me to get to the finish line. And, that doesn't involve talking about it. It just involves doing it. So the formatting was the hardest part. That was like right before I talked to you. And I was like so proud of myself to finally say the formatting is done. The publishing date is official. And now it's here.
Well, it's awesome because I feel like almost everyone that I know does some type of fasting. And there's so much misconception. And I remember when I think I started fasting, I've done different intermittent fasting things for the last maybe 2.5 years. And I remember there wasn't much information back then. And I don't know if there is much now, but I remember getting some fancy doctor had some audiobook that was supposed to be the Bible. And I'll never forget, I finished it. And I'm like, I literally have more things unanswered than I did before I started reading it. It caused more confusion, I guess. And what I loved about yours is you don't just say, nothing else matters. Here's the fasting window. Go at it. It's like a holistic approach to health. And you talk about, the actual diet, not just the fasting window, but what are you putting in your body? And are you stressed? Are you sleeping? Like, what else do you have going on with yourself? And I always think, Marisa, if someone tries to sell something as like, this is the be all and end all, and a lot of people are doing that with fasting, right? All you got to do is have a short fasting window and you can eat whatever you want. I just think it's bullshit. I know I've lived long enough to know that everything is complicated. So when you write a book on fasting and you talk about all this other stuff, that really resonates with me. And you probably answered every single question I've had for the last 2 years, like whether it's conscious or subconscious. So it's been awesome. And before I read it, I fell off the wagon a bit and I've been so disciplined since I've got back. Get up in the morning, have my bulletproof coffee about an hour after I wake up, and then I fast for maybe 3-4 hours. And then the same in the evening, which is the hardest with late night snacking. For a lot of guys, I was talking to some of the guys at the gym. They're all like, yeah, I'm doing the fasting, but it's the late night snacking. That's the biggest problem. So congratulations, basically. I just wanted to sing your praises.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an exciting time. And there's nothing that makes me more happy than hearing feedback from people who are reading it. And the things that you've taken away from it already are so rewarding for me to hear. Thank you for reading it cover to cover. It seems like a gigantic book, but really I formatted it intentionally to be readable, bingeable. And you could take all this information in because there's plenty of white space, lots of bulleted lists. And yeah, it's not like the other fasting books. Those are more like academic style. The other books are like almost trying to prove a theory or hypothesis, and they're walking you through the hypothesis. And so they get into a lot of the science and like proving theories right or wrong. And that's not usually what the dieter needs, And so after all these years of coaching hundreds of people, I've just realized all of the ways that we get in our own way and why intermittent fasting is not as simple as everyone makes it sound.
Well, Marisa, can we start with a little bit about the factors that make or break fasting? And you talked about maybe just spend a minute on each, but just as a kind of overview, because you talked about sleep, hormonal health, stress, diet, activity level that I want to come back to, and then your fasting window. And so many fasting books just talk about the fasting window and not the other stuff. So I'd love to talk just a little overview on that stuff, if that's okay.
Yeah. There's a very initial chapter, I don't know, chapter 1 or something, that's 7 things that make or break your progress with fasting. And I opened the book with that because otherwise I'm walking you through my very gradual approach. And some people might not be patient for that, but I think starting with those 7 factors helps open up the reader's eyes to all of the nuance and things that we need to consider of why it may or may not work for you. Because a lot of people are going to read it who have already tried intermittent fasting. And so it's not easy, like, to take a step back when someone's saying not so fast. It might sound good to the coach, but to the person doing it, they're not ready. That's why those things need to be addressed. I see it all the time where people are like, oh yeah, I know, like, it's all about the fasting window, whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't think you realize it's not just about how long the fast is. It's about, what time of the day that window is happening and how that fits with your exercise routine. If you just started or restarted, if you just got back from vacation, if you just got over COVID, like, if there's just so many variables that would change how long your fasting window should be or what time it should start and stop. And then we can go forward with other things that seem obvious, like diet, and your dieting history is one of those 7 factors. And that might seem obvious, but it's really not. In the fasting community, there's so many other books that are like, just fast your way out of a bad diet, no problem. And entire sections of my book are dedicated to prove to you why it actually matters what you eat, even though you're fasting, or especially because you're fasting. I mean, there's just so much criteria. If you have a history of weight loss and regain, and you have a history of extreme dieting, that's going to matter even more. Like, your body is starved of nutrients or just hyper concerned with nutrients because it's afraid it's not going to get them since you starved it through so many things in the past. And so it's going to be holding on to your body fat for dear life as a defense mechanism against its survival. And it's going to be making you hungry, another defense mechanism. Is going to be, stubborn with the weight that you do have. And it's going to be even possibly making you gain weight, slow down your metabolism, you name it. So the sleep thing, geez, if I could just get half of my clients to care about sleep, that would just be so rewarding to me. Because some of them I have to say, what if sleep is the one thing to explain why you're not getting the results you want? Like, what if? Then would you be willing to address it? Then would you be willing to prioritize it? Because, I mean, people can see in the book all the examples I give, but sleep is so absolutely cornerstone and foundational to you making strides with your health, mental health, physical health, quality of life, your potential in general, just what you're capable of achieving day to day. It's so absolutely essential that your metabolism, your immune system, and your self-discipline all depend on whether or not you had a good night of sleep or not. And a lot of people don't realize that. And they might think I had a good night's sleep because I was in bed for 8 hours. But then if they start using a sleep tracker, they see they're getting 30 minutes of deep sleep, and that is not enough.
That's my biggest problem today. I know I should have known better, but I went for a late run last night with a friend of mine, and he made me a cappuccino after, and it was delicious. And I had it. Then we had dinner. Then I drove home. Then I did some work late, and it was late when I went to bed. I should have just passed out, and I was wide awake. And I'm like, I should have known better. But late night coffee, Marisa, it killed me. And sleep, I just feel like sleep is such an interesting one because it's the high achievers that are so driven and motivated. They're the ones that I feel like they're easy to deprive themselves of sleep. Whereas if they're kind of happy-go-lucky, not really too motivated, I feel like it's almost easier for them to they probably get enough sleep because they're pretty relaxed and they're not trying to squeeze every ounce of everything out of their life, So I think that's it's so nice the way more and more high achievers are talking about, like, no, like, the goal is not 5 hours of sleep a night. It's to be well rested, so I'm mentally sharp and I feel physically good. And I'm so jealous. I worked with a guy who definitely had that gene that's supposed to be so rare. That one gene where you can be fine on 5 hours. And it's supposedly like less than 1% of people have it. But that guy would be so spry when I was trading. 5 a.m, he'd probably, I talked to his wife. He's up past midnight. He'd be at the office, just after 5. I'm half asleep. And he's like chipper and chatting. And it's like so annoying. Those people.
So annoying.
But sleep is so important. But the fasting window, I feel like that's what all the people promoting fasting, and that was what I heard. I heard if you take the exact same diet, the exact same calories, and all you do is, instead of eating it over 15 hours, you just say you narrow it to 10, you're going to have all these incredible hormonal benefits. You're going to lose body fat. You're going to get leaner. And I've got to be honest, the first time I started fasting, and I'm sure now I know I was doing a few things wrong, but I didn't notice any change. The only thing I liked is I liked in my schedule, and you talk a little bit about this in the morning. A lot of people with hectic mornings, it's nice just to roll out of bed and not have to worry about eating, right? Start your day.
Mhm.
But in terms of the actual benefits, is that a myth where if you have the exact same diet and the exact same calories and and you do it properly, are you getting some of the benefits that people talk about, or is that overblown?
It just depends because it depends on so many other factors. Like, are you getting accustomed to fasting or are you just trying it for 2 weeks and seeing if you get results? Because there's adaptations that will occur if circumstances allow for it, where the hormesis, the beneficial stress of fasting, the hormesis becomes advantageous to you. So your body starts to respond in ways that make you feel sharper mentally. You have more energy. You think less often about food, and weight effortlessly stays off. That could happen, absolutely can, but that's the problem with a lot of fasting research is they're taking people who don't normally fast to do an intermittent fasting study, and they're not giving them time to adapt. Like with the method that I teach, you have to train your body for fasting like you train your body for running a marathon. You train your body incrementally to get to each of these milestones instead of just saying, okay, you're fasting 16 hours. I mean, everybody thinks it's just a mindset game, but it is absolutely not. It's like you're training your cells, your DNA, your metabolism, you're turning on genetic switches. Like there are cascades of chain reactions and all sorts of complex systems changing in response to these inputs, but it's not like a one-time thing and you're done. It's not something that you can just start and stop whenever you want when you're new to it, especially not after the way that we've been living now.
Right. And you just talk about that. I really like that approach of it's like anything. If you jump in, if you want to train for a marathon and your program is 4 10-mile runs in the first week, you're probably going to get injured or quit, right? It's too hard. So you talk about starting with a 16 hours of not eating and 8 hours of eating, and then slowly increasing the window
No,
to maybe
12
that.
hours.
Oh, it's 12. So
Let's
sorry. Yes.
yeah.
So initially 12 and 12, right? And then you spread it to 60, and then you go into 18. But
No,
what
you
is
don't even jump from 12 to 16. Like that's key. Like just to make it clear, people need to do 12 hours until it's effortless and comfortable. And then maybe they're ready to jump to 13. But usually I do half-hour increments because of all the scheduling constraints and things that you need to work around. So you might think, oh, great, I'm fasting 12 hours effortlessly till 9 a.m. right now. I'm just going to go till 10 a.m. But you didn't think about the fact that you have a meeting at 10 or a meeting at 10:30. And so you're like, shoot, when am I going to eat? And so this like scarcity mindset starts to make you overeat at 9 o'clock because you're worried you're not going to be able to eat. Like all these other new problems just pop up when we rush through the process. But anyways, let's say things are going great. You're loving this 12-hour fast. Then you try to do 13-hour fast. You just stick with that for 4 to 7 days until it feels comfortable and effortless. And that's your sign that your body's ready for the next level of discomfort. So it's not like pushing yourself through the discomfort to get to this arbitrary number that everybody on the internet says we need to achieve. It's about like working with your body to train it in a way that it's responding favorably to. And you know that because fasting should make you feel great every time. If fasting makes you feel worse, that means for your current circumstances, you're not doing it, appropriately.
So is there an end goal, or it's just see how you feel and see how your body's responding to it and how your energy is and your mood, and then just kind of take it from there? Should there be an end
It depends.
goal?
Because it depends on your outcome goals. If we're talking about someone who's a high achiever like you and you're just like, I want to see what I'm capable of, then I would say an end goal is just figuring out your baseline daily intermittent fast is so that you can get enough protein to fuel your workouts and meet the demands of your lifestyle. And then once you have that, then you can think about doing like monthly extended fasts or strategic prolonged fasts that help you tap into different phases of autophagy or, mental clarity, spirituality, like other places that you may want to take it. But you don't need to train as much for those long ones because they serve a different purpose,
Right. Right. Okay, let's talk about that because that's one thing. I'm so glad you talked about it, the activity level. And I always think there's such a big difference between an athlete and a sedentary person who's not breaking down their body. So of course they can have different requirements. And I grew up in when I was a teenager, I was in the early 90s, and everything, no one even talked about fasting then. It was all about your body can only absorb a certain amount of nutrients, especially protein. So if you're breaking it down, you want to be having 6 more meals, basically starting from when you roll out of bed to just before you go to sleep, right? It's completely backwards now. So can we talk a little bit about that approach? And I guess there's a difference between sport performance and then health. And that's the other confusing thing too. Because when I was young, I always assumed, oh, if I'm performing better, I'm the most healthy. But now we know, sadly, they're two very different things.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just going to, at some point, you're going to hit that mark where you decide that your long-term health is more important than outdoing your last achievement, athletically. And a lot of people, especially men, don't get there until they're already like 60. If they're athletes, I'm saying, just
Right.
in general, like that's just the type of person that you are, it's very likely that unless you get some major injury and setback, you're probably not going to prioritize health, long-term health over performance until you're like 60 or retired athlete or something like that. But if we think about how to weigh those odds for someone like you who actually cares about both things, I think it just has to come down to time-bound goals that you have right now. So are you training for an event? Are you actively trying to outdo some score that you have? And is this by a certain date? Because if you are, then you have to decide if your, goal in the next quarter is to meet that, outcome physically, or is it to make sure I don't get injured so that I can do this XYZ race at the end of the year? Like which one has the highest ranking in your hierarchy of goals? That is absolutely essential for you to have a hierarchy established, because you're always going to be in conflict, motivational conflict about what matters most. Is it like when time with my kid is up against my training schedule, what wins? Okay. Yeah. Obviously, if my kid needs me, it's always going to be my kid. Some of those things are obvious, but a lot of things are not, and they need to be systematized. So if you're thinking like, I really shouldn't do fasted workouts because I'm trying to see my potential, just remember that fasted workouts can be 12 hours fasted. You want to see what your body is capable of regarding metabolic efficiency. So how much can you accomplish and how great can you be on less frequent feedings? That's optimal. That's ideal. If we're talking about achieving both maximum performance and longevity, you need to figure out what that threshold is where you're optimizing performance and achieving some metabolic flexibility that is absolutely required for longevity. The typical runner athlete training schedule and eating schedule is constant carbohydrate refueling and constant digestion. But if your digestive system is constantly being demanded, other things are not being taken care of. You can absolutely guarantee that. So muscle repair and muscle growth is being impaired because digestion is always underway, and anti-aging, fighting cancer, disease prevention, detoxification. Your brain is not getting all of the resources that it needs. That's actually how I ended up trying fasting to begin with. I was really frustrated with my ADHD brain. And I just found out I had ADHD when I was like 26. I dropped out of college 3 times. I had no idea what the hell's wrong with me. And once I figured it out, I was like, I don't want to solely rely on medication to get things done. And at the same time, I developed a gluten sensitivity and gluten intolerance. And so I suddenly had to change my diet and I couldn't eat gluten. And that was devastating because I'm a big foodie and I'm Italian and I love food. And so when I learned about why gluten sensitivity is more common, I was introduced to the paleo diet. And the paleo diet is essentially like trying to eat mostly foods that humans have always had before industrialization. And so that's like without machines and without, the advent of organized agriculture, like what kind of foods did humans eat? Things they could hunt and gather. And so it made a lot of sense to me. Like, why are so many ingredient lists made up of things I've never even heard of or I can't pronounce? Like, to me, that just made a lot of sense. But upon learning about the paleo diet, I was introduced to intermittent fasting. And I was like, that sounds cool, but that is so not for me. Like, I was like, I love eating. Eating is life. Food is life. Like, it's literally my hobby. I love food. And so I was like, not into it. But then the whole ADHD thing happened. And I was like, oh my God, I just realized something. I was like, so I was learning about ADHD, like just so people know, we all have this executive center in the brain. Your executive functions happen in the prefrontal cortex of your brain. And so that's like the most advanced region of the brain. Our brain is developed in so many different stages, and that one is the most advanced that really sets us apart from other species. And it's the most energy intensive. That's where we have the most densely packed mitochondria, where energy is made inside all of your cells. And mitochondria are greedy nutrient monsters. Like, they absolutely need all of the nutrients that you are ingesting in order to keep you sharp and alive and in defense against pathogens and all things related to our immunity. But so I'm thinking, wow, this part of my brain where executive functions are impaired in a person with ADHD, managing too many things and, just self-managing, time awareness, all kinds of things that we need to do to be productive workers. Well, I was like, dang, if that needs all this blood flow and energy and resources to my mitochondria there, but I'm requiring all this blood flow and energy and resources to my digestive tract when I eat, it makes sense that my body probably needs a break. If I want my brain to be at top performance, I probably can't be asking it to digest food at the same time. And so I was starting to say, all right, in the morning, I kind of forget to eat sometimes. And, when you have ADHD or you have little kids at home, mornings are hectic. It's a time when you just want to simplify things. So I was like, let's just see what happens. Let me give this a try. And so I inadvertently adopted intermittent fasting because it was absolutely obvious to me that my productivity was way higher when I didn't eat. And that sounds very contradictory to a lot of the advice you get about the nutrition for ADHD or how to be more productive. And so I tested my theory. I did I think they call it a KEEG, but an EEG for my brain. It's called brain mapping. And this psychologist who specializes in EEGs for ADHD brains mapped my brain out, this 100-page report about all the different waves and activity in my brain. So I did it fasted, and then he ran the map again 30 minutes after I ate. And I ate just a green salad with avocado, sardines, cabbage, tomato, and a homemade olive oil-based dressing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to eat like the cleanest meal I could possibly think of. And that's not going to be an issue. And then he was shocked. He was like, oh my God, Marisa, like your brain is significantly impaired after eating this meal, like statistically significant. Coming from his academic training and background, he understands what is something that is significant and what is not. And so it wasn't just in my experience, we have proof now, at least this snapshot of this day, we have proof that I do have exacerbated ADHD symptoms. I have trouble concentrating. I'm more likely to be depressed and irritable, and my stress tolerance is lower, and just go on and on and on. And so that is why, to me, it was I needed to determine what's most important, my love of food or eating in the morning, for whatever reasons, other than, do I want my productivity to be the number one priority in my life? Yes, I do. So it was a no-brainer.
That's wild. So even a meal that healthy was giving you all these negative markers.
Yeah, but that can just be because my digestion was impaired at the time. It could be because it was a raw food, and cooked foods are easier to break down. It could be, that I ate it in a hurry, a setting I was in. Again, I said it's a snapshot because even the doctor was like, hey, this isn't, necessarily giving us an entire conclusion about you and fasting, but this is remarkable and definitely something to explore in my practice, because he works with ADHD individuals. So I think because I have a nutrient-dense diet outside of my fasting window, I don't really represent the average person who might be trying to fast their way out of ADHD. A lot of people with ADHD are not eating enough protein. They're not cooking homemade food. They're not sourcing whole food ingredients. They're eating a bunch of junk because we're more compulsive. We're more likely to fall for shortcuts and easy way outs and addictive foods. And so just kind of knowing those things about yourself kind of gives you an idea of where you need to start. Some of my clients want to just jump all in, but I'm like, if we don't fix your sleep or we don't start cooking or shopping for real food, then we're already starting a losing battle.
I'm so glad you mentioned that it could have been that it was raw. It could have been that I was stressed today and I ate in a hurry. Because that's my biggest pet peeve about all these food tests is they don't compare. They say meat eaters, and it could be a guy who's getting wild caught, meat. He's a hunter and he's eating that with lean vegetables. He's being so careful. That's the same meat eater as a guy that stops home and gets a 32-ounce Coke with his 2 cheeseburgers at McDonald's. Like, they're both meat eaters, but there's such an obvious difference between that. So I'm so glad that you said it. All the data is just, it's so difficult to know when you're trying to talk about which of those, for instance, those 7 factors you're talking about, well, which ones are impacting this and which ones are not. But that what you said as well about being, it's impossible to be as clear-headed on an empty stomach as it is when you have a full stomach, right? It's impossible because the blood's going to your stomach. You're not going to be as focused. And that was my main, I guess, attraction to intermittent fasting, was having a black coffee in the morning. I just felt, number one, it's easy and it's quick. But number two, I'm so much more productive. I'm not sitting there digesting. I'm feeling lethargic. And I guess I'm a night owl. So if I was a morning person, maybe it'd be different. But my energy is always low in the mornings. So it fits with the schedule so well. I can just roll out of bed, start my day. The one thing that I got from the book is I've never done a proper bulletproof coffee. I tried putting in black coffee just some butter, but I never put it in a blender, so it always mixes terribly. It sits on the top. I put some MCT oil. It's terrible. And then when you blend it, it tastes a lot better too. So I've been doing it since I got back the last week. It's been
tastes so great.
Awesome. It's been awesome.
Good.
I did want to ask you one thing, Marisa. So I've heard a few doctors tell me I really should cut out all dairy because dairy, I don't think I'm lactose intolerant, or maybe a lot of people are a little bit lactose intolerant, so you don't notice it as much. But from what I heard from doctors is, and that podcast I sent you with that one guy, he was talking about this too, like milk and dairy products that are made out of milk is made for baby cows, not for humans, right? So we have different digestive systems, and most people don't do too well with dairy. So I love cutting out milk because obviously, as you explain, and I never really thought about it like this, but milk is, as a carb, is going to screw up your fast, right? If you have milk in your morning coffee. But if you put butter, because it's just fat, it's not. But even if it's organic butter, is that something that ideally I should just have straight black coffee for my health? Or you think that's okay to have the fats from butter?
I think it's better to have the fats. Yeah, I think it's better to have the fats. I mean, it's like I work with a lot of people who are trying to lose weight, but you're not. And so, any opportunity you can get to optimize nutrient intake is key for you. I mean, those fatty acids protect your brain cells and nourish your gut bacteria and promote more ketone production if you're fasting. And so there's a lot of benefits from you having those. Plus, it adds to your experience, like that this can be a lifestyle because it's something you really enjoy. And that's a factor that really shouldn't be minimized, because all of this stuff is fruitless if it cannot be something that we want to continue, So you should enjoy your coffee, and that's a big reason why you should drink it that way.
I'm so glad you said that, because I've thought about that too, where like if I could cut out all the fun things in my life and live to 150, would I do it? Well, obviously not, right? There's got to be trade-offs you want to have that balance, and everyone's going to be different, right? Some people are like, I still want to smoke my pack or two of cigarettes and I'm just going to die of, lung cancer. That's a bit extreme. Or you have the other people, like there's that guy, I forget his name. He's on Instagram where he gets the blood of his son. He gets these IVs and he's trying to live as long as he can. He does everything in his life. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He's doing everything in his life to try and, promote health. And I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle, right? I'm trying to be as healthy as I can while still doing the things I enjoy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I went the wrong direction at first when I first learned about, I would say, around the time before I became a health coach, I was just passionate about the paleo diet. But when I learned about all that stuff, I was kind of freaking out. Like, everything's going to give you cancer. Everything's going to be diabetes. Everything's going to make you have Alzheimer's or an autoimmune disease. And I really lost a part of myself in that part of the journey. I started to think like, I can never eat tortilla chips at a Mexican restaurant again. I have to bring my own salad dressing to every restaurant. I have to bring my own crackers and bread and things to parties. And when I go out to eat, I have to ask them to cook my food in butter or ask them, the ingredients in something they're making for me. And holy crap, can you imagine how much that sucks for the people I'm dining with?
Yeah.
Poor Eric, he was here for the ride and he was just like, oh my God, you suck. Like he was literally like, Marisa, I cannot with you. Just order your food and I'll wait in the car. Like I can't. Because I was always nice about it, but it was like this whole ordeal, like I wasn't
Yeah.
rude and I knew I'm like, this is going to be really weird, but and then I asked the person specific questions. I didn't like it either. So after enough instances where I'm dining out with friends or dining out with Eric or dining out with my family and things ended up being awkward or, I sort of regretted the way that I acted, I had to take a step back and say, who do I want to show up as? Like, how's my relationship with food going to be different now? And how can I combine these things about myself, like someone who's passionate about nutrition and has to be gluten-free with somebody who loves food and socializing around food. And, that's one of her favorite things in life. Like, who is that combined person? And so it really took this sort of like creative re-identification process that I went through. And I was like, I could still be a foodie who loves food and loves going out to eat as long as it's gluten-free. And I realized I can make exceptions when I go out because I literally eat out like once a week. And so like if I just do all the other stuff at home, what is the big deal? It's not a big deal.
Well, I'm so glad you said that because I'm in that same situation with Victor. He's 3 years old. And I just see that all this stuff that if you don't look at ingredients, everything has sugar in, has all these preservatives. So I'm trying to protect him from some of that without also being that weird anal dad, that doesn't let him have any fun because he's still a kid, So it's that idea of balance is so important. And so when you go out at all, when you go out now, is it just a treat meal as long as it's gluten-free? Or do you ask for what they're cooking things in? Because now you say that, it's like, I kind of want to ask too, because I know that those oils are just so bad for you, right?
I already know what they're cooking in, so there's no point in asking. Like,
okay.
Yeah. But the only thing I do ask is if they have an olive oil based dressing. So like an Italian restaurant might have that, a Greek restaurant might have that, but almost all other restaurants will not have that. It's just too expensive. Or if they do have it, it's an olive oil, canola oil mix. That's kind of common in commercial kitchens. But so that otherwise they will often have a bottle of olive oil and a bottle of vinegar that they can bring to your table. So that's what I'll usually go for. I'll say, do you have olive oil? I'll say, yeah. And so I'll just ask for oil and vinegar to make my own. But that's probably the only thing that I do. And it's just because I love salads and I want to start my meal with the salad. And there are a lot of benefits to preceding the rest of your meal with a salad. That helps prime the digestive tract. Digestive juices are stimulated. Enzymes are stimulated. It reduces your glucose response in the meal that you're going to have. So if you're going to have a carb-heavy meal, having that vinegar-based salad beforehand is going to improve your glucose response and reduce that spike. It's also going to enhance your ability to break down other foods like difficult to digest proteins and things that maybe aren't as agreeable. Or if something was charred, like your meat is charred, those vegetables and those vinegars are going to help counteract the carcinogens that can be off-gassed in your GI tract, which is part of the reason why meat gets a bad rap, is because we're eating a lot of charred, blackened, grilled, fried meats. And so when they're doing these demographic studies or drawing conclusions from epidemiological data, they're comparing meat eaters that are eating wildly different forms of meat, where most people are eating fried chicken, fried fish, blackened steaks, blackened burgers. And all of those are high in carcinogens and are difficult to break down and are dangerous for your gut and colon cancer and aging and all sorts of effects like that. So I do think about those things when I eat out, is that I almost never, if it says blackened on the menu, I'm not going to order it. If it says charred, I'm not going to order it. Like, it's just my last choice.
So that's the understanding I have is things like the plaque that builds up that causes heart attacks and things like that. That's, from what you're saying, is when it's been fried. So how should you be cooking chicken and fish and steak?
So plaque in the arteries is different. In relation to what I was just saying, that was more so about like carcinogenic compounds, so cancer-causing compounds that, gives meat a bad rap, or why they might say meat causes cancer. It doesn't. But certain types of meat preparations can. And that's more of what I was emphasizing. But if we're talking about arterial plaque, we just have to know that that is like your body has this sort of mechanism in place to protect your blood vessels and enhance your longevity. And plaque is one of those fail-safes. But unfortunately, it backfires because the context of the diet or what's entering your bloodstream is so inflammatory that the more inflammation and more oxidation that's in your bloodstream, the more it's going to build up that plaque in your arteries and become deadly. And so if we think about what is causing inflammation or causing oxidation in your bloodstream is going to be deep fried foods of any kind, anything that combines high carbohydrate with high fat or high carbohydrate with high protein, because those combinations make either, in the case of fat and carbs, you're going to have elevated triglycerides and elevated glucose at the same time. And your body's going to have to deal with the glucose first because that's the most deadly. So then you're going to have triglycerides hanging out longer. And it's going to be, depending on your metabolic health, it's going to be contributing to certain heart disease related conditions. But in the case of high carb and high protein, what surprises people is, the carbs attached to the protein molecules, they're called glycation end products or advanced glycation end products, AGEs. So age, like it's advanced aging. So it's aging your cells because they're binding to the proteins. And then you have these misshapen or misinformed proteins that are now wreaking havoc and causing oxidized free radicals, which just means a chain reaction of inflammation in your body. And so we have just sort of been like eating like any way we want, anything we want because we can. And even when we're trying to be healthy, we're just like not thinking about, I don't know. I always go back to ancestral health. To me, that's just sort of like where all the answers are. Like, how would food have been combined in history? How would we have been preparing food in history, because history speaks a lot more for what our body is capable of than present time does. If we look at like the grand scale of our time as walking this earth as human beings or our greatest human ancestors, most of the time we were not civilized. Most of the time we did not have industrialization or anybody making things for us. And we didn't have refrigerators or preservatives or, just a drive-through that we could go through. And so that's why fasting makes sense for everybody to incorporate into their life, because humans always had fasting as an inevitable part of their existence until food was so readily available that we've overcomplicated things and overthought them. The same thing with deep frying stuff. Like, how the hell would that have ever happened before industrial? Like, I mean, seriously, even with a cast iron pan, would you have had so much fat? Like maybe you caught this like big, wild, whale. Okay. It's a lot of blubber on a whale, right? So I'm just trying to think of something. Okay. So much blubber. We got so much blubber. So they're like using it to moisturize their skin, and they're using it to keep warm in their houses, and they're using it to cook food, but they're not going to be like, oh, wow, if we turn the heat up really high, we're going to be like making this crispy and it's going to be amazing. Like, they're just thinking about how to optimize this resource so that they can get the most out of it. And they're respecting like the wisdom of food and nature and ingredients in a way that they're not like trying to transform it with chemistry. They're not like, trying to see like, how can we make this the most delicious thing we've ever had? They're more like, what is the best way for me to get the most out of this food? And yes. None of us think about that now.
So forgive my ignorance. Jen normally cooks with, I think it's called an air fryer. But is that okay? Is that a healthy way to cook, or is that bad?
I don't really know. And I'll tell you why, because a lot of things are popping up that claim there's new compounds being created, new chemical compounds being created from this circulation of air with the fat molecules that are in there and the high heat temperature that we air fry at. So you just have to understand that like even vegetables have glycation end products. So even if you're just frying kale chips or just frying Brussels sprouts in your air fryer, there are glucose molecules and protein molecules, because plants do have some proteins in them too, that are now binding and causing that crispy, reaction, or that when you pan sear something like salmon or you pan sear something like carrots, either way, if they're caramelizing, you're getting the advanced glycation end products. And so those are really just things like for treats, like they're, it's not necessarily like oh my God, that's so dangerous. It's just like I have an air fryer, I try not to be a perfectionist with these things, but it's like, if we're trying to fill a void, like I miss having my crispy fried chicken, so now I have it all the time because I make it in my air fryer. I think it's just sort of like a misinformed pivot where really, if you're trying to be healthier, you're just looking at the lesser of two evils.
So can I ask you, Marisa, if you're trying to say protein staples like a piece of fish or a piece of chicken, and then like vegetables, should the vegetables be more raw, and how should I be cooking the protein? I guess what's the ideal?
What's ideal is variety. So completely diverse preparations and sources. So like you just do not want to be routine with what you eat, because any one thing that you have a lot of, that means you're getting a lot of that one thing's nutrient profile and a lot of that one thing's toxins. And even vegetables have toxins. I mean, lectins are one of the most famous groups of plant toxins that have benefits in certain ways, but in general, we are facing a lot of them. And gluten is a group of lectin proteins. That's the most famous one. But plant proteins, are being promoted now as if like that is superior. But the more that we introduce our body to isolated plant proteins, which never in before history has the human body been introduced to isolated plant proteins, the more we are threatening a genetic adaptation that's not desirable. And we can say the same thing about any food that you want to eat often. Like if you just have, tomatoes all the time, believe it or not, you're more likely to develop a tomato sensitivity or a lectin sensitivity down the line because you just have tomatoes all the time, every day. And it probably wasn't the same for your grandpa. We can't compare to people that lived before us because times are rapidly changing and we are exposed to toxins and chemicals and things like just exponentially more than generations before us. And the stress that we're living, the way that we're sleeping, how disconnected we are with nature, all of these things combine to make us more vulnerable to certain inputs, and it starts with your diet. So back to your question, should I have raw vegetables or should I have, cooked meat, whatever? I do think slow cooked proteins is the best way to go. So low and slow or low heat is the best way to go, or cured without curing salts, without nitrates. So like natural curing is like just salt cured. You can like salt cure your own salmon. You can acid cure your own raw meat or seafood because that's what tartare is, or that's what ceviche is. But slow cooking, low and slow, is awesome, even in a busy lifestyle, because you can just put it in a slow cooker and set it and forget it. And the meat becomes so tender, and even vegetables become very tender. And that means there's less work for your digestive system to do. And so those nutrients are more readily absorbed through your GI tract, and there's less toxins because those have already been reduced or eliminated in the cooking process. And with vegetables, raw sounds great. If you just want to read about it, you'll find all these reasons why raw is so amazing. But unfortunately, most of us today lack sufficient enzymes to break down raw foods adequately, or we have what's known as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, so SIBO, or an overgrowth of bacteria, beneficial bacteria, in the wrong place in your GI tract. So instead of being in your large intestine where they belong, they're in your small intestine where nutrient absorption is supposed to occur. But instead, these microbes are like munching on the raw veggies that you just ate, and they're farting out literally all these gases that makes you fart and have gas. So if you're bloated and you have gas and you're like, where is all this coming from? I've been trying to eat so clean. It's probably because you have an overgrowth of a certain strain of bacteria, or an overgrowth of bacteria in the wrong part of your GI tract that is now feasting on whatever this raw food is that you've had, or whatever this food is that you eat too frequently. That's another reason you don't want to eat too frequently the same foods, because then you're feeding the same strains of microbes in your gut instead of diversifying your diet, which diversifies the populations of species in your gut.
I'm cringing, Marisa, because when I was fighting for 5 years, I had almost exactly the same meals, and I was, largely single before I met Jen, and it was, oh my goodness, that was. I'm much better now. She's very, you had a whole chapter on just like all the variety, like all these different foods out there, and I think it's very inspiring for people. Like try new things. Like life is about experience. So I love that. You
Awesome.
mentioned I know you're Italian, and I have some Italian in me, and I love Italy. And one of my favorite things, I'm not a foodie like you, but I am a foodie when I'm in Italy. And one thing that's so depressing is the food there doesn't give you the gluten. It doesn't give you that awful bloated feeling you get in the US. You can have a mountain of pasta or a huge pizza, and you just feel light and good after. And it's so depressing. Do you know what that is? Is it just that the ingredients there are purer, or is it something more than that?
I think there are several theories, and it's probably like Eric would say multifactorial. First of all, they use a different wheat plant. They grow a different wheat plant. They don't even have our dwarf wheat variety that we grow in the United States. They have a lot of like heritage and cultural principles in their food regulation associations, like the people who decide on what's possible for agriculture, what's legal, or what's possible in their food system, have extreme integrity in keeping old traditions and, culture the way it is. Without advancements from technology. And so that means they also, not only do they not have these hybridized crossbred forms of wheat that are higher in gluten percentage, like the plant in America makes a lot higher gluten content in it, but it's also a completely different plant, like it would be unrecognizable. And so not only do they have this less hybridized version of the plant, but they're also not allowing glyphosate weed killers. So in the United States, a lot of wheat and grains and corn are sprayed with or contain BT toxin or glyphosate weed killer. And they're sprayed with that to help hurry the harvest season. It's called crop desiccation. And with or without it, that land is often exposed to glyphosate because of runoff from the rain and agriculture industry and surrounding land. There's just so many reasons where no matter what you do, glyphosate's in everything here, but it's not there. It's not in Italy. And why would that matter? Well, we have human studies and lots of scientific research that shows when gluten is in the presence of that glyphosate chemical in our GI tract, it triggers zonulin. And zonulin is like the gatekeeper to the intestinal wall. And it allows certain nutrients to pass through. So that's how you get the nutrients from your food. And then it will keep other nutrients or anti-nutrients out so that they get eliminated through your bowels. But when zonulin is triggered prematurely or inappropriately, zonulin causes temporary leaky gut and intestinal permeability. So that is when certain proteins, molecules, or food substances are entering your bloodstream and causing inflammatory reactions or immune system reactions. Whether or not you have a sensitivity to gluten is not the point. So they don't have that problem in Italy. But then you add to it also like all the other elements, like you're on vacation. Your body is probably, your stress tolerance is also increased. If you're eating different foods, you're increasing diversity in your diet in general. They also have different preparations for grain-based products. They use old methods. So they use wild wheat yeast fermentation instead of commercial yeast. So they're not using man-made yeast or synthetic yeast. They're using the yeast that's already in the air or already on the plant. And they're proofing the dough. Like they're letting the dough sit to naturally rise. And that's because they understand the microbes are starting to break down those proteins in the plant so that it is more fit for human consumption. There's just like an endless number of variables that could play a factor in why that is. But we do see even people with celiac disease can tolerate gluten-containing foods in Italy. And now we have some ideas why.
Marisa, it's so frustrating that like you said, once you have all these chemicals with the runoffs, they're getting everywhere. And I always thought I was healthy, and I just got some blood work done, and I had environmental toxins was pretty high, and plastics was like really high. So I'm doing this like detox thing now, and I want to get a sauna so I can help with the detox. But it's like I drink out of a metal water bottle. I don't think I use plastic very much, but it's just there's so much plastic around. I seem to have got dangerously high levels now, which is impacting fertility if you're trying for as kid number 2.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating, Marisa. It's like it's almost like the deck is stacked against you living in America right now.
It is. It does suck. I feel the same way. And it's the dose that makes the poison. We have to keep reminding ourselves that if if there's something you're doing every day or consuming multiple times a day or consuming every day or feeding your kids every day, that's where you want to start.
Mm.
And so for men, it's your body wash and your hair, your shampoo, because every single day, especially as an athlete, you're taking at least one shower. And so you're using that product every single day. And our skin is an organ and it absolutely absorbs everything that's in your body wash and in your shampoo. And so does your body absorb the shower water. And so you can be getting microplastics from shower water. You can be getting it from your shower head. A lot of shower heads are made with plastic. And so sort of starting with things that you frequent, as part of your routine is more important,
See, Marisa, that's so interesting. I wouldn't have even thought that, but it's true. The gym that I go to a lot, they have showers, and I don't even know what the body wash is, but I'm lathering it up everywhere. It's branded. I'm sure it's not high quality because they're just putting it in a gym. So it's just like these little things that you've got to think about, and it can definitely get a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, it can get overwhelming.
Yeah. Can I ask you your thoughts on, so for me personally, I think I love the idea of doing 3 hours in the morning, just with a bulletproof coffee, and that I'm not even hungry. It's perfect. And I try and get a workout before my first meal. And then in the evening is also easy, but it's not easy. It should be, I know how important it is not to eat just before you go to bed, because doesn't it spike your insulin? It's really bad for deep restorative sleep. But that's the easiest thing you can be disciplined all day. And I've done this so many days. And then, you're going to bed in 30 minutes or an hour and you're watching a TV show and you're just snacking on something and you're not even hungry. It's almost like that mindless, the mindless thing that you do. So,
yeah.
I know exactly what you mean about you have to make it easy enough to do, but I think I've been doing this long enough where that should be pretty easy. I have a couple of questions though on if I normally break the morning fast with, I try to get a workout in before, not always, and I normally have a shake. I like to make a shake. And I know there's different types of protein to use. I used to use whey for whatever reason, and now I try and use hemp because I just assumed it was better for me. I have no clue. Do you have any opinion on different types of protein powder for health?
Well, regardless, whey protein is superior. They're really,
okay.
Yeah. We have tons of research on that, which is kind of nice because for most supplement related type of things, we don't. But whey protein, we have tons, on all different subsets of people. So people who are very metabolically ill, people who have cancer, people who are obese, people who are healthy athletes, women, male, kids, you name it. They've tried every group. And the reason it's superior is because whey is one of the most readily absorbed forms of complete protein, that powder in general. And even though there are a lot of dairy sensitivities, there are very few that are sensitive to whey. So the casein protein in dairy, casein is one of the top allergens, and lactose, which is the sugars in milk. But one of the proteins, casein in particular, which became popular in athletic supplements and stuff, you want to stay away from that because if it does get through your intestinal wall, it's more likely that your immune system will respond, with the reaction to casein, that one in general, because it mimics the molecular structure of gluten. There's this thing called molecular mimicry. So people who have sensitivity towards one will see it that they can't tolerate the other. So Magic Spoon cereal, for instance, has milk protein concentrate. You better believe that's, more likely to cause an allergen response or a sensitivity than just whey protein if they would have been using that. But there's whey protein concentrate and whey protein isolate. So if you suspect you do have dairy allergies, whey protein isolate might be better because it's literally just the isolated whey. But the problem with that is it doesn't taste as creamy. So if you're mixing it with water, it doesn't taste as good. But it also could be more denatured, meaning the proteins are damaged because of all the processing they had to do to achieve that. Whereas whey protein concentrate could trigger some sensitivities in people who have dairy allergies. But if it doesn't, then we might be getting, if it's a cold processed or undenatured whey protein, we could be getting a more superior form because it's not as highly processed as the others.
Okay, I gotta switch back to whey then.
I mean, you can alternate, if you're not sure, if it's like, if you have a dairy sensitivity, if you're
I don't think
having
I
trouble
do.
connecting those dots. Okay.
So I don't think I was having any problem with it. I just thought because I'm a marijuana sympathizer, I was like, oh, hemp protein sounds more healthy. That's how uninformed I was. It was literally just, it sounds more healthy. Can I ask you about, I
It
know,
just doesn't have the same amino acid profile.
gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
So even though it's a complete protein, it's just a little inferior because it doesn't have the same amino acid ratios. So you're not going to fuel your performance or your muscles or recovery nearly as well as you would with the whey.
That's so good to know. Thank you. Can I ask you about I have kimchi, and then I was having those kombuchas you get from Whole Foods, and they're delicious. And I would have them late at night, so I'm screwing up my fast because I'm sure they got a bunch of they do have a bunch of sugar, and I didn't realize how much sugar they have. And then if I've had a long day, I'm having 2 or 3 of those, and I'm like, these are terrible. They have so much sugar. I'm sure So I was completely when I first was doing fasting, I was completely screwing up my fast by having those.
Okay, yes, that will break a fast. But I do want to say something very, very interesting about kombucha, the kombucha industry in the United States. Okay, so years ago, maybe like 5, 6 years ago, maybe even more, somebody sued one of the most popular kombucha companies, GTS Kombucha. I love GTS. They're so amazing. Yeah. Oh my God. They have so many awesome flavors. Okay. So before this lawsuit happened and the plaintiff won, they could put on the labels of kombucha, the nutrition facts label would state how much sugar and carbs is in the finished product, the product that you're drinking. So kombucha bottles used to say 6 grams of sugar or 10 grams of carbs, much lower, like a third of the numbers that we're seeing now, and sometimes like a quarter of the numbers we're seeing now. And that's because once the lawsuit was about somebody saying that's not how much sugar was used to make the product. And the company was like, yeah, but the yeast eat the sugar, and that's what makes the kombucha. So the sugar's not there anymore. But because of the way like the FDA and USDA make nutrition facts and nutrition label laws, they changed it so that kombucha labels need to list the ingredients and the nutrition facts of the ingredients. And so unfortunately, you are seeing a number that doesn't represent the amount of sugar you're actually ingesting. And so I wore a glucose monitor and tested my blood glucose fasting, drinking kombucha, and there was no change in my glucose levels. I mean, there was like maybe a few points, maybe a tiny blip, and you are going to be breaking your fast. But I'm just saying that it's not minimal. Something like drinking a glass of juice or a glass of soda. But keep in mind that there are kombuchas that have juice added afterwards, and you can tell because they're not clear. So most kombucha, even if it's a color, it's clear. You can see through the liquid. But some of them are like murky or cloudy or juicy. And that's because they added the juice afterwards. And so those are going to be higher in sugar.
So the GTS, they're not as bad. They will break a fast, but they're not as bad as it looks. Is that correct?
Not at all. And kombucha is just so good for you to help diversify your gut, especially if you're willing to switch brands or switch flavors. I encourage you to try different brands. Same thing with kimchi. If you're a kimchi fan or sauerkraut fan, I mean, the best thing you could do is constantly try new brands and constantly try new styles.
Well, that's good to know, because those kombuchas after a hard workout, especially in the summer, like a long run outside where I'm really dehydrated, I feel like they're the best recovery drinks. So awesome. That's good to know that I quit drinking them because I felt so guilty with all the sugar. So I can get back to them. That's awesome.
Yay.
One thing, Marisa, can we talk a little bit about what breaks a fast? Because I know there's some that was always the most confusing thing to me, and I thought you did a really good job talking about that. What breaks a fast? Because I think there's a lot of miscommunication. Like you said, it's going to depend on those other things too.
Yeah. I mean, that's why in the book, or, even before the book, I've had 4 lists of what breaks a fast. There's not just one list of what breaks a fast. There's definitely breaks a fast, and maybe or rarely breaks a fast, never breaks a fast, and probably breaks a fast. So there's 4 lists because there's so much nuance that we need to consider. And within each list, certain things might break a fast, but it might be better for you to use that thing to hack your fast or to hack your diet rather than trying to do it without it. And so some examples of that for you would be at night to have a protein shake, or at night to have like essential amino acids, which is something I mentioned a couple of times in the book. And because they are proteins, they will prompt an insulin response, not as much as if you had carbohydrates, but it will still require insulin. So that does technically break a fast, but it's so short, first of all, and such a small amount of insulin required because you don't have to break it down or digest it. Like protein powders and especially essential amino acids, just the isolated amino acids, are already broken down into their smallest parts. And so your GI tract, your microbes, your stomach, none of that has to do the work. It's just ready to be absorbed. So it's just like, boom, absorbed. It's shuttled out of your bloodstream with insulin. And it's not a lot. So it's not a big job for insulin. And so, boom, you're back into a fasted state in no time, but you still gave your muscles what they need to recover from that workout.
Gotcha. So that's the balance between the performance and then the health, right?
Yeah. So does it technically break a fast? Yeah, but there are still clients who I am recommending you should probably put collagen in your coffee. For a lot of people, I would say they shouldn't to start, just because it's technically breaking your fast. And we want to see how your body responds to going without food. But for some people, if they have unresolved thyroid imbalances, if they have hunger in the morning, and even though they're only fasting 12 hours, they might have had a history of disordered eating. Just having those extra nutrients is comforting to their nervous system. And so therefore, it's reassuring to their metabolism. And so we're going to have less setbacks and less plateaus, or less likelihood that this person's going to want to quit or binge when their eating window's open.
Right.
That's why there are 4 lists. I mean, there might be, certain chewing gum that is going to knock somebody out of a fast, but maybe only if they ate 4 pieces of the gum, or maybe only if they had that gum after they already ate, or maybe, it's just like so many things to consider that there's no way it could all be in one list.
Well, Marisa, that was my other thing. I was like, what, chewing gum? Because if I'm fasted, normally, like in an ideal day, okay, I mean, like today, today was a good day. So I got up in the morning, I worked a few hours, I left at 11 to get to the gym. I teach at noon. Oh no, I left at 10 because I had to work for an hour, and then I went from 11 to 12 to the gym, and I'm sipping a bulletproof coffee. And then just as I'm walking the gym, I have a piece of gum because I don't want to be doing jujitsu, with coffee in my mouth, right? So would one piece of gum that's like a sugar-free piece of gum, that's, I'm assuming, not enough to break a fast?
It depends. I mean, there is a sugar-free gum that one of my clients just asked me about. But I looked, and the first ingredient is a type of sugar. But because these brands only have to label something as containing sugar, or 1 gram of sugar, they only have to do that if it has more than 0.5 grams of sugar per serving, first of all. So if it has 0.4 grams of sugar per serving, they don't have to label it, and they can say it's sugar-free. But there's also a 20% leeway of what the labeling laws require. And so there's a 20% buffer of error. And of course, these huge corporations optimize on that, and so that they can say that their product is sugar-free. So it really just depends what the ingredients are. And, the one that we love and the one we have in our house is called Peelu gum, Peelu. We ordered it on Amazon. The flavors that we love are spearmint and cinnamon. Those are the only 2 that I recommend. One of the other ones I had was nasty, but they're so good. And the flavor doesn't last as long as a lot of other chewing gum, but no, they're made with xylitol and isomalt. So isomalt is like a sugar alcohol essentially, and 90% of it is not absorbed through your GI tract, which means it doesn't get to your bloodstream and doesn't act as sugar. And xylitol is similar. So there's reasons why these sugar alcohols and stevia and monk fruit can be superior. You do have to read the ingredients. Like even on a stevia packet, you have to read the ingredients, because Eric just ordered a box of stevia off Amazon, and this product, the first ingredient was cane sugar, and it's a freaking stevia packet.
It's so frustrating.
And some of them, it's like sucrose or maltose or whatever other, industry name that the customer doesn't even know.
Yeah. I remember getting into bickering with Jen about that because she was giving something to Victor, and I'm like, "Have you even seen what's in here?" And she's like, "No," because they had the fake packaging like it was healthy. I'm like, "This is terrible. It's got all these crappy ingredients in." And it's like that's one of the problems with today, isn't it? Is everyone's so busy and you have so much going on that most people don't take the time to actually look and see what they're
Yeah.
putting in their body. So it's one thing saying, "Hey, when I go out to eat, that's my treat day, and I'll do as best I can," but I know it's eating out. But it's another thing, like everything you're eating, if you just get used to buying things and you're not checking the labels. So these are all such good reminders. That thing about the gum blew my mind, Risa. I never even thought about gum breaking a fast, but it makes complete sense.
Yep. There's a lot of rabbit holes. That's how it ended up being a whole book.
There's one thing, I think you and I have both done it. The 5-day prolon like fast mimicking system. So that one for me, I've done it. We've both done it twice, and I felt pretty good. I worked out every day, like not crazy, but I felt pretty good. It wasn't. It's almost mentally harder than physically. It's just like, oh my God, I'm not going to eat for 5 days. But the one thing I didn't understand is especially because you and I both agree that I like the idea of having not too much carbs in my diet, mainly protein and good fats. And some of those snacks they seem to me like crappy, unhealthy carb snacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a highly processed food fast, but it has been, meticulously formulated by one of the world's leading fasting researchers, Dr. Walter Longo. And, he's like a lot of researchers and scientists, he believes in a plant-based, strategy to longevity, but that's because nutrition science sucks, and we can't do effective human studies that represent what it's like in the context of our daily lives. But I will say that it's also intentional because protein is going to inhibit autophagy, and he's trying to tap into autophagy. That's one of the longevity pathways that is celebrated in fasting, although it's in its infantile regarding how much they understand about it. And I don't think that it should be the reason that we do fasting. But it's very intentional formulations so that we are tricking the nutrient sensors in the body to thinking it either needs to stay in a fasted state, because remember, genetic switches are turned on and off in reaction to everything that we do. And fasting turns on and off certain genetic switches that make it say we're going to make nutrients this way or meet our nutrient needs this way. But if it thought enough food was coming in, then it would say, we don't need to make nutrients this way anymore. We can use these nutrients that are coming in. But the way that the prolon fasting mimicking diet is formulated, those nutrients are flying under the radar. So your cells are saying, no, this isn't enough to shut down those processes, so let's just keep fasting. So it's kind of cool that we are able to tap into that. Now, certain people do really well on a fasting mimicking diet, but they don't do well fasting. It's like the idea of going without food scares them so much or makes them feel so deprived that they are just unwilling to follow through. Whereas, like if they're eating the prolon fasting mimicking diet, they're excited because they have a system and they look forward to their meal, even if it's a really small meal and they're hungry. They're just encouraged to keep going. But people like me, I'm like, food's on my mind the whole time I'm doing the fasting mimicking diet. It is totally, for me, not better than fasting with no food. Because if food is just off the table, literally, I'm not thinking about it. And when I do think about it, it's fleeting. Like I just get over the hump and I'm fine. But with the fasting mimicking diet, I was literally like, when can I have my next bowl of soup? When can I have my next cracker? Oh man, I wish I had those crackers from yesterday. Like I was just constantly thinking about food. And I was like, this isn't better for me, but that's because I was already fat adapted. I'm already keto adapted. My body's already metabolically efficient and flexible. I already do fasting. For somebody who doesn't do any fasting at all, I think that is an awesome way to experience by day 4 and day 5, how incredible you really can feel when you're restricting food in that, strategic way.
So do you, because you're so dialed in with your daily fasting? Can I ask you, Marisa, do you have a set schedule where you fast a certain amount of hours, or are you a bit more flexible personally?
I do not. I almost never have. And that's how I came up with my method, because I realized like people are having all these issues trying to incorporate fasting, maybe because they're being too rigid, maybe because there's too many rules. And if we think about how humans have always fasted, it was not scheduled or,
Yeah.
routine or whatever. It was unpredictable. And that works because I don't have a super strict schedule or super strict routine in my daily life. And it also depends what I have in my fridge or when my husband gets home or, when my clients are that day. And if I want to get something really mentally taxing done or not, I'm not doing this to lose weight at this point. And so I'm really just doing it for my productivity or because I believe that it's good for my metabolism. So I don't ever do the same thing twice. And after I had COVID 2 years ago, my whole relationship with fasting changed. I guess if for people who are still listening, it's important to say that your body needs an excessive amount of nutrients and amino acids to recover adequately from COVID. And so fasting and COVID just are not friends. It's just a very nutrient hungry infection. And your mitochondria will be starved of nutrients even months after you have healed from COVID and no longer have symptoms. And you think life just goes back to normal. And so you want to start fasting again. Your body's got a different idea of what is ideal right now. And it's going to need a lot more nutrient and complete proteins. So for a while, I was really struggling to fast, more than 13 hours after I had COVID. And I was grateful to learn from Chris Masterjohn. He has a nutrient guide for the coronavirus prevention and treatment. And I learned so much from that, but it just became so obvious when I was like, oh, no wonder, my mitochondria really need excessive nutrients right now to fully recover because your mitochondria don't just make energy for your cells. They are also threat defenders, threat detectors. And so your immune system relies heavily on the health of your mitochondria, but your mitochondria have to choose, am I making energy to fuel this human and all the things that they want to achieve today? Or am I making energy to fight this infection, disease, debilitating circumstance that I'm under? And so when it's trying to recover from COVID and you're just drinking more coffee and trying to push through the day, you're wondering why I'm not losing any more weight or why am I so hungry and why is fasting so hard? It's because you haven't allowed your mitochondria to fully recover. And so since then, I've only done 2 36-hour fasts. That was 2 years ago. And I just probably twice a week do 18-hour fasts and several days a week do 16 and the rest of the days do 12.
Right. Well, that's one thing I really liked because I couldn't agree more on the ancestral approach. So there's something about ancestrally when a pack of hunters were going out to hunt, they're probably going to be pretty hungry. Maybe they have a few little snacks before or something. But I know when I work out hungry, I always thought I had such a big mental block between not having breakfast before doing jiu-jitsu at noon. And it's no, we evolved to exercise hungry. And I feel great doing it now. And I love what you said about it ancestrally, you don't have a set schedule, right? It's based on availability. So I really love that. There's one thing you said, fasting has always coexisted with feasting. And that's exactly true, right? Ancestrally, maybe food's not available and then there's a big hunt or something and you're going to gorge. So do you do that when you feel like it? Just hey, it's a Saturday. I want to have a good time. I'm just going to eat a lot today. How do you, and I'm assuming it's really good because your body's going to adapt to anything. So that kind of throws off your body and then you're going to get more results down the road. But how do you approach feasting, I guess?
Yeah, this is a different conversation for people who are metabolically healthy and those who are not. Any feast, like an overabundance of food consumed in one sitting, is extremely metabolically taxing and requires a great metabolism and metabolic response in order to process without too much harm. So for people who are listening, if you don't read the book or this is, new information to you, metabolic health is actually very uncommon in America among adults and a lot of children today. And that's just because we are carbohydrate dependent. We eat too frequently, we eat too much, and we don't have enough nutrients. So you are probably insulin resistant. It's safe to say that a majority of adults are insulin resistant today, whether or not they have, pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, they're still having problems with nutrient transporting from the bloodstream to your cells. And so not only is our digestion impaired today as well, because we lack sufficient enzymes in our bodies and in our food system. A lot of people are low on stomach acid. They don't have diverse enough gut microbiomes. So digestion is impaired. And then on top of that, metabolic responsiveness is impaired. And so for a lot of people, feasting is a bad idea. It only becomes critically important, first of all, for enjoyment and opportunity, like celebrations and things. Again, I want to just emphasize there are places for that, and it serves a purpose beyond just what immediately happens to your health. But also, it serves feasting serves a purpose for people who are tend to restrict too much. So it can be like a compensatory pattern that people fall into with fasting, where they're just like fasting their way out of a bad meal they had the other day, or because they know they want to pig out this weekend, they're going to be fasting a bunch, but they're also exercising a bunch. And so, your body has these built-in like genetic responses to those behaviors, and it's going to make you gorge. It's going to make you overeat and binge. So I like to recommend 3-meal days instead of feast days, because feast days are often interpreted as cheat days. They're just an overabundance of foods that are not necessarily healthy. And 3-meal days is what I call them. And it could be 2-meal days, depending how much you fast. But 3-meal days are intentionally eating 3 nutrient-dense meals. So 3 full meals for somebody who's not used to eating 3 full meals because they intermittent fast every day is kind of a lot of food. So that can be like perfect on a day where it's the weekend and you have plans and you want to have a nice family breakfast, and then you're also going out and going to have a picnic or whatever, and then for dinner you got to meet your friends. And so perfect, a 3-meal day can be that, but it doesn't mean that you're like, yeah, pasta and beer and pizza and ice cream and all these things because it's my feast day. Like, that's what feast days imply, and that's why I think they're not helpful.
I'm so glad you made that distinction. That's so true. Are you like, I know some people are very anti-sugar. I've always had a sweet tooth, and it's been a problem for me. I feel like I'm having too much sugar, but I know if I'm exercising a lot, I feel like I kind of burn it off. I guess if I look at myself, and I'll say the 3 big, having all the stuff we talked about today, my own personal 3 biggest weaknesses. 1, I got to be better about sleeping more, because I sleep okay, but I think I need to sleep a little bit more. 2nd, late night snacking. And 3rd, I would say just overall sugar. Like, I just love sweets and treats and things like that. And I feel like ideally I would have none, but then we talk about the standard of life and enjoying life. Mm-hmm. So I think just moderate sugar. But I also have something where if I have a really hard training day, then I feel like my body's just craving more food, more sugar. And almost like I think I'm quite in tune with my body. I don't know if it's just my mind playing tricks on me, but I feel like I'm just craving more for that, like you said, for that rejuvenation.
But like in that situation, would you consider fruit sugar?
Yes, but I normally, like, the only fruit I really have is blueberries and banana in my shake for the potassium.
But you love pineapple, right?
Yes.
Okay, so a great way to meet that desire and to fuel yourself post-workout with something sugary that feels like a treat would be to have pineapple, because your muscles are ready to absorb that glucose, and it's going to be put to use in a way that is metabolically healthy. But it's also going to be a lot of sugar compared to what you normally eat. And so doing that on a daily basis would probably not be ideal. It wouldn't necessarily be harmful. It's just all of these things related to sugar are habit forming. Right. And you already know about yourself that it is very habit forming for you. And so I tell people, like, even though you might be like, I really want, to have that cupcake at the place next to my gym because I had a great workout today, just know that that cupcake is going to inform choices and reactions that you are suffering through for the next week of your life, just because you made that decision that one day.
I'm so glad you said that, because for people like me with a sweet tooth, I've explained to friends that have more savory, that's it, they like their savory treats, but it's like, I can enjoy a dessert at dinner, but then I'm, like you said, I'm going to be having sugar cravings more than usual for the next 3 days. And it's so frustrating. It's like, it takes so much enjoyment out of it. So I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. One of the things that you learn from wearing a continuous glucose monitor or checking your glucose is that things that are like ice made with isolated sugar, cane sugar, just in general, like candy or desserts, most of those things are going to cause like a huge spike in your blood sugar. Whereas if you had something like pineapple or strawberries, it still has like 30 grams of sugar in it, it's not going to have that same impact. And the reason that really matters is because those dramatic highs and lows are what lead to insulin resistance and what lead to all these other metabolic disorders or addictive food patterns and things like that. So we want to just find ways to fulfill our desires to have more sugary foods like that are also metabolically reasonable.
I couldn't agree more. And it's common sense, right? Fruit over, packaged sugary treats is.
Yeah, or honey is another solution. Like maybe you want to make a yogurt bowl when you get home and you use plain Greek yogurt, high in protein, organic, and then you top it with some paleo granola, blueberries, and then drizzle it with honey. And you just go to town because you had a great workout that day. Honey absolutely responds differently, both to your glucose and to your insulin. And so even though it's high in sugar, it is still very different when we talk about your metabolic reaction to it.
Such a good point. Marisa, I really appreciate you because you just talk so much in nuance. And that's how I knew you knew about the stuff, but I didn't appreciate the depth of your knowledge. And you blew my mind because I've been a lifelong athlete and I always thought I knew about health. And there's so many things that I either didn't know or you reminded me of that I kind of knew, but I've forgotten about it. And I'm the typical human laziness has overcome it. So everybody check out Marisa's book. It's amazing. Not so fast. I'll put a link in the show notes. And I really appreciate your time, Marisa. And I might have, if it's okay, I might have Jen reach out because I want her to pick your brains a little bit about us cooking better because it really is. It's like the one thing about diet that I think it's worth stating is it's so easy that we fall in patterns. And I feel like ever since it's only been a week, but it's just, I don't even think about it anymore. It's so nice. I roll out of bed. I know my bulletproof coffee. I'm going to make it in about an hour. So I do whatever I've got to do. And then I make it. And I'm not even thinking about eating because I know that's just my routine. And I feel like the easiest way to do this is just, like you said, do it slowly. And just when it becomes easy, then you can slowly increase it. And the biggest problem is people try and get from A to Z straight away and missing all the steps. So I love your approach. You're such a wealth of knowledge, and congratulations on. I know writing a book's not easy because I'm still working on my real estate book and I haven't published it yet. So kudos to you, and you're doing an amazing job promoting it. And just you're so knowledgeable. You really know your stuff, and it's been a real pleasure.
Awesome! Thank you so much for the conversation. I geek out with anybody who's willing to do it with me.